So let's start with today's newspaper analysis. Can you all see the newspaper on your screen now? Is it visible? Chali. So to stall the pilot CM plan, mentally Gehlot loyalist MLA submit resignation.
Sir, your voice is very slow.
सभी को आवाज सुनाई दे रही है मेरी और ओनली शिवानी स्पेशल ओके सागर सृष्टि
सर आपकी आवाज आ रही है लेकिन बहुत स्लो आ रही है सर, मतलब हमारा वॉल्यूम फुल करने के बावजूद भी सर आवाज बहुत धीमी आ रही है।
यस सर।
Hello.
I think sir has not started yet.
Okay now.
स्लो ही आ रही है सर।
हाँ?
स्लो ही आवाज आ रही है जर।
अब आ रही है आवाज?
हाँ सर अभी आ रही है सर।
So there is one more crisis in the Congress in Jaipur now in Rajasthan. So around 19 MLAs have submitted a resignation. Jaipur crisis shadow over the Congress presidential poll. That is what is mentioned here. So, okay, we can skip this article. No need of reading this article. Let's move on to the next page. Okay, so Mukul Rohatgi has turned down the AG post. AG post, anyone knows? Attorney General of India. Yes, Indian polity में हमने देखा था कि there is one government lawyer as per the Constitution of India. So Mukul Rohatgi, who is a senior lawyer, he has turned down the offer of Attorney General. That is what is mentioned here. He was earlier also the government lawyer, Attorney General from 2014 to 2017. So anyone knows what is the normal tenure of the Attorney General? Attorney General का normal tenure कैसे होता है? And how the Attorney General of India can be removed from the post of the Attorney General? Yes, Mustafa.
सर नॉर्मली वो 5 साल का उनका टेन्योर होता है, लेकिन वो सर जब तक गवर्नमेंट उन्हें रखना चाहते हैं तो तब तक रख सकते हैं सर प्रेसिडेंट।
The tenure, normally the tenure is for 3 years, but after 3 years the government can continue them, or otherwise they can remove them, because Attorney General is a executive post. So the person can remain on the post until the president's pleasure is there, right? जब तक president की मर्जी है तब तक वो रह सकता है. President in the sense the pleasure of the union government. चलिए, now let's move to the next page. Fine. So here the government, the advertisement, as we have already discussed in the basics of Indian economic class yesterday, day before yesterday, that there were reforms in the indirect taxation system, and as a result of that, the GST was introduced in India. All of you remember that earlier there were so many types of taxes, then that taxes have been subsumed into a single tax that is called VAT. In further, services and production of the goods and service goods have also been submerged into a single tax that is called GST. So that is what is mentioned here. It is a next generation reform for GST taxpayer. So GST taxpayers के लिए एक और reform किया गया है. So what is that? With effect from 1st October 2022, generating e-invoice will be mandatory for B2B supply of goods and services. B2B means business to business. मतलब एक बिजनेसमैन दूसरे बिजनेसमैन को अगर कोई सप्लाई कर रहा है, कुछ मटेरियल या गुड्स सप्लाई कर रहा है, so that is what is called B2B. And there is one more type of supply that is called B2C. B2C means business to consumers. So Now, e-invoice will be mandatory for B2B supply of goods or services or both, or for exports for taxpayers whose aggregate annual turnover is exceeds 10 crore in any of the preceding financial year. तो अगर किसी का जो टोटल टर्नओवर 10 करोड़ से ज्यादा है तो ऐसे लोगों को e-invoice has been made compulsory. So this is an attempt by the government to stop the tax evasion. मतलब जो बहुत बारे जो टैक्स इवेजन होता है, people don't pay the tax, तो उसके लिए ये प्रोविजन बनाया गया है. So in e-invoices bears unique invoice reference number which is generated through invoice registration portal. So this e-invoices is an attempt by the government to avoid or to stop the tax evasion. जो टैक्स नहीं पे करते हैं जीएसटी, उनके लिए ये बनाया गया है. The Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. So this is called CBIT, और एक टैक्सेस होता है डायरेक्ट का होता है, that is called Central Board of Direct Taxes, that is called CBDT. Now let's move to the next page. RERA has empowered buyers and rent-in builders. RERA is a law. Recently क्या किया गया है? The law has been made, like whenever the builder is building the home, it has to be built in a time and pass over to the customer who is buying the home. इनके लिए एक कानून बनाया गया जिसे हम RERA, that is Real Estate Regulatory Authority, has made this law. So just read this law, article to understand that how the RERA has helped the customers, that is buyers, and it has also reined in the builders. Now let's move on to the next page.
सर वो जीएसटी टैक्सेस में जो रिफॉर्म्स किए गए सर ई इनवॉइस का, सर एग्जैक्टली उसका फंक्शन क्या होता है सर?
ई इनवॉइस मतलब जब भी कोई गुड्स या सर्विस अगर कोई बाय कर रहा है तो उन्हें ई इनवॉइस जनरेट करके ही करना पड़ेगा. अगर वो नहीं करेंगे तो फिर उन्हें पनिशमेंट होगी, और ई इनवॉइस जनरेट करने से पता चलेगा कि कितना गुड्स एंड सर्विस उन्होंने सप्लाई किया है और उतना उन्होंने टैक्स पे किया है नहीं पे किया, वो भी पता चलेगा.
Got it, sir. Got it.
Okay, here there is one article related to the ecology and ecosystem. So this year there is lower rainfall in Delhi. So Delhi and surrounding region में insects हैं. There are some dragonflies and damsel flies, etc. As we all know that global warming and climate change के बहुत सारे impact हो रहे हैं. कुछ जगहों पे बहुत ज्यादा बारिश हो रही है, कुछ जगहों पे बहुत कम बारिश हो रही है, और उसके वजह से the animals and plants are not able to adapt themselves with respect to you can say with changing environment, right? So that is what is mentioned here, that lower rain in Delhi this year has meant for dragonflies and damsels. So इसका क्या impact होता है? कम बारिश अगर होती है तो insect और dragonfly पे क्या impact होता है वो explain किया जाए. So GS paper 3 topic ecology and ecosystem, उसके लिए ये important रहेगा. So those who have already read the basics of environmental studies, जिसने पढ़ा है, you can read this article. These remaining are the political news. You can read it by yourself. Yes. Yeah, there is one statement given by our Prime Minister in Man Ki Baat that there is a task force to decide when people can see cheetahs. That's what our Prime Minister said. And he also said a competition to name cheetah project. 8 felines has been mentioned. So just read this article. to understand that what initiatives have been taken by the government for this cheetah project, you can come to know. We've already discussed a lot about it. You need to know what are the pros and cons of introducing such animals into the national park and biosphere reserves. So there are many, many environmentalists, many ecologists are not very, happy with the idea of introducing the cheetahs in India. So that is what is explained in this article, that what was the purpose, that why the cheetah has been introduced in India, that we can come to know by reading this article. Now here there is one more article related to the internal security challenge. There is one movement called Khalistan movement. There are few radical organization. It is a radical organization in Punjab that they want to establish a separate nation of Khalistan. So this movement is active in India since in the last 30 years. So during Indira Gandhi's time, this movement has been crushed out. But again, time and again, few the internal security challenges have been created by this Khalistan movement in India. So GS paper 3, there is a topic called internal security challenge. In the internal security challenge, we will see that what is this Khalistan movement in detail. So that is what is mentioned here. Khalistan referendum seen as a trigger. Ministry of External Affairs has sent advisory to split Indians in Canada. So Canada में कुछ riots हो रहे हैं. There are some riots which are happening in Canada. So उसी से related ये article लिखा हुआ है. So just read this article, that why the riots are happening in Canada, because we all know that Canada में बहुत सारे Indians वहाँ पर settle हो चुके हैं. In GS paper 2, there is one topic called Indian diaspora and their challenges, right? Indian diaspora मतलब जो इंडिया के लोग बाहर दूसरे कंट्री में जो सेटल हुए हैं उन्हें हम इंडियन डायस्पोरा कहते हैं. तो उनके कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स है. तो कनाडा इज वन सच कंट्री वेयर a large number or a huge population of Indians have been settled in Canada, especially Sikh community from Punjab. ज्यादा मतलब सिख कम्युनिटी वहां पे ज्यादा सेटल हुए हैं. तो वहां पर एक इश्यू चल रहा है, the violence is happening in Canada. So why this violence is happening in Canada, you can come to know by reading this article. Farm income has been doubled since 2014. That's what the UPCM has said. Yes, farmers' income. Kavya, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
This topic, this year's discussion which we will be having on Sunday, that how to increase the farmers' income, whether the income of the farmers has really increased or not, and if it is not increased, how to increase the farmers' income, what measures shall be taken to increase the farmers' income, that we can take this topic. So as per UPCM, the farmer income has doubled since 2014. That's what he had said. So one of the important objective or one of the important election promise of the current government, the BJP government, is to increase the farmers' income by, to double the farmers' income. So just read this whole article, that how the income of the farmers of UP has doubled in last 8 years. There is one more article, that is conduct social audit of midday meal scheme by November 30. That's what the central government has asked. So GS paper 2 mein there is one topic called various welfare policies and issues associated with the design and implementation. जो government के जो अलग-अलग जो policies हैं, उन policies का design और implementation को लेकर क्या issues है, ये हमें देखना जरूरी है. तो midday meal scheme is one such government welfare policy, to one such government, those you can say the government scheme through which the nutritional level of the children are trying to be increased. As we all know that India is having one of the highest percentage of the hunger and malnutrition in the world. So to reduce that malnutrition in India, midday meal scheme has been started in India. So uska social audit karna chahiye. That's what is mentioned here. Now midday meal scheme is implemented by the union government or state government. कौन इसको implement करता है?
Union government. Both sir, 60-40.
40. But final, ये जो मिड डे मील स्कीम में जो है ना, फंड्स आर प्रोवाइडेड बाय द यूनियन गवर्नमेंट बट हैज टू बी इम्प्लीमेंटेड बाय द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट सेम लाइक द पीडीएस में भी वैसे ही है. इन पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम द यूनियन गवर्नमेंट प्रोक्योर्स द फूड ग्रेन बट इट इज डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड बाय द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट. सो नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट NFSA GS पेपर 3 में एक टॉपिक है, that is issues associated with the food security. Right, Rahul, do you remember? GS पेपर 3 मध्ये हा टॉपिक आहे, लक्षात आहे? Rahul, am I audible to you? चलिए, so just read this article that many states and union territories have not submitted their final reports of implementation of the midday meal scheme. That is what is mentioned here. So there are some irregularities in the implementation of the scheme. How many of you think कि ये जो midday meal scheme जो है उसको जो implement किया जाता है उसमें irregularities है या सब अच्छी तरीके से implement हो रहा है पूरे इंडिया में? Or is there any problem related to the midday meal scheme?
Can you please repeat the question?
Is the midday meal scheme implemented properly in the schools, or are there any irregularities in the midday meal scheme, the way it is being implemented in India?
Problems है sir, irregularity तो नहीं है, problems है sir.
Yes, so that is what is mentioned here, that the center has directed the states and union territories to carry out the social audit of midday meal scheme in every district by November 30, with local authorities across the country running behind schedule and completing the task mandatory under the National Food Security Act 2013. 2013 में जो National Food Security Act बनाया गया था, as per that all the state governments are supposed to provide the social audit of the midday meals. So what is the social audit? That is what is mentioned here. Social audit of the scheme not only helps in deleting the irregularities, including siphoning or diversion of the funds, but also helps the state and central authorities to get first-hand feedback from the local communities right at the Gram Sabha level. So that is what is mentioned here. तो कोई भी गवर्नमेंट जब कोई स्कीम इंप्लीमेंट करता है तो लोकल लेवल का पार्टिसिपेशन बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. दैट इज व्हाट इज मेंशन्ड हियर. ड्यूरिंग द PAB PM पोषण मीटिंग्स आल्सो states and union territories have been direct to conduct social audit in all schools covering all districts. Fine. So just Mustafa, can you tell me why this social audit is अभी इसको ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस दिया गया है in September?
बिकॉज सर जो सितंबर मंथ है सर वो पोषण माह बोल के गवर्नमेंट ने डिक्लेयर किया है सर.
Yes. So every year September is observed as a पोषण माह अभियान. पोषण माह ये पूरे सितंबर महीने में न्यूट्रिशन से रिलेटेड कैंपेनिंग, अवेयरनेस as well as सब कुछ जो डेटा है वो निकाला जाता है. So September month is the पोषण माह अभियान. Remember. So those who are connected with the Anganwadi शायद उन्हें पता होगा. Now let's move on to the next page. Today's editorial page related to the Russia's issue. So Russian roulette. President Putin's strategy of coercive mobilization to reverse setback in Ukraine is not winning him friends at home. So यूक्रेन रशिया वॉर जो चल रहा है उसमें रशिया की हार हो रही है और उसके लिए जबरदस्ती उनके जो रिसोर्सेज उसको मोबिलाइज करने की कोशिश की जा रही है बाय पुतिन, and that is not been supported by the people of Russia. That is what is mentioned here. So what is happening in Russia, that is explained here, so you can read it if you are interested in Russia Ukraine war. What is happening in Russia Ukraine war? Here Julan Goswami has retired as a sportswoman. So just read this article that how she was an inspirational sportswoman for the young generation. SY Qureshi, who was the India's ex-chief election commissioner of India, has written an article on RSS chief. Recently, he has met with many Muslim intellectuals, and he has also, visited to mosque and madrasa. So SY Qureshi has written an article that why we met the RSS chief. Strong belief in dialogue and concerns about situations of Muslims were behind the initiative. So that's what SY Qureshi has said. Okay, here there is one article written by Jyoti Punwani that criminalizing the peaceful protest does no credit to the world's largest democracy. India is one of the largest democracy in the world. So peaceful protest को criminalize करना is not good for the world's largest democracy. That is what is Jyoti Punwani had said. So we have seen that as per Article 19, the Constitution of India has given a right to protest, right for peaceful assembly, and right to freedom of speech and expression. That is what is mentioned here. तो इस तरीके के पीसफुल प्रोटेस्ट को क्रिमिनलाइज करना, उन्हें जेल में डालना या उन्हें अरेस्ट करना, ये इंडिया जैसे लार्जेस्ट डेमोक्रेसी के लिए अच्छा नहीं है. दैट्स व्हाट शी सेड. Prakash Singh has also written an article on reforms in police system in India. If India is to progress and emerge as a great power, there is no alternative to radical reforms in police. All of you agree that there is a need to have a reforms in the way the police is working in India.
Definitely, sir.
So that is what he is saying, that if India wants to emerge as a great power, there is need to have a radical reform in the police system in India. तो वो क्या करना चाहिए, कैसे करना चाहिए? He has written an article here, so you can read it. Soumyakanti Ghosh has written that rupee will bounce back strongly. As we all know that the value of the Indian rupee is depreciated hugely in the last few days. It has become 80 rupees against a dollar. So Soumyakanti Ghosh, I think he's an advisor to the Prime Minister of India. Yes, he's the chief economic advisor to the State Bank of India. His views are personal, and as per him, the Indian rupee will bounce back again. The Indian currency has weakened because the dollar has strengthened. So as per him, dollar strength हुआ, इसके वजह से इंडिया का रुपी weak हुआ. That's what he says. Not because economic fundamental have been worsened. तो इंडिया के इकोनॉमिक के फंडामेंटल में कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. डॉलर स्ट्रांग हुआ है, उसकी वजह से इंडिया के रुपए की वैल्यू कम होगी. That's what Soumyakanti Ghosh is saying. So take this topic as well for this week discussion. Why the Indian currency value has been depreciated. तो as per Soumyakanti Ghosh, डॉलर स्ट्रांग हुआ है, इसकी वजह से इंडिया के रुपए की वैल्यू कम हुई है, और इंडिया की इकोनॉमी के जो फंडामेंटल्स हैं उसमें कुछ खराबी नहीं हुए, ऐसे उनका कहना है. Are you in agreement with this, Mustafa? Do you think the fundamentals of the Indian economies are still strong and they have not worsened?
No sir, no. थोड़े बहुत तो वीक है सर फंडामेंटल.
फंडामेंटल्स ऑफ इकोनॉमी मतलब क्या?
मतलब सर इंडिया के जो पॉलिसीज है सर रिलेटेड टू इंपोर्ट एंड एक्सपोर्ट सर, टैक्सेशन से रिलेटेड.
तो इंपोर्ट हमारा बढ़ रहा है, घट रहा है?
इंपोर्ट बढ़ रहा है सर, एक्सपोर्ट घट रहा है.
उसके अलावा और क्या रीजन है?
और सर
और डेप्रिसिएशन ऑफ इंडियन रूपी. यस, ठीक है, we will discuss it on Sunday.
Okay, sir.
Fine. Take this topic, rupee depreciation and appreciation. Now next, thinking universities. They need more freedom, not management jargon and state control. So universities से related एक article है, higher education challenges and problems of higher education system in India. So Indian university में ज्यादा रिफॉर्म की जरूरत है. Their management jargon and state के कंट्रोल से यूनिवर्सिटी अपना काम अच्छे नहीं करेगा. मतलब गवर्नमेंट को ज्यादा कंट्रोल नहीं करना चाहिए with the way the universities are functioning. That's what Sukant Chaudhary said, who is a professor emeritus of the Department of English in Jadavpur University. Now let's move to the next page. Lumpy skin disease, nearly 1 lakh cattle have been died. Toll almost double in 3 weeks. So what is this lumpy skin disease? We have already discussed about it. So you can go and check it out once again. So axes, scrappers and handmade tiles have been found in the Tamil Nadu excavation. So optional history में पहला topic है the importance and significance of the artifacts in interpretation of history. History के interpretation के लिए इस तरीके के जो artifacts मिलते हैं, अवशेष मिलते हैं, उसका importance क्या है? That is what is explained here. Some axes, scrappers and handmade tiles have been found in Tamil Nadu's excavation. That is at Nathammedu in the Tamil Nadu. So it gives some idea about the Sangam age of Tamil Nadu. Now let's move to the today's explain page. Yes, star rating for packaged foods. Do you remember a few days back there was one news where the FSSI has said that जो packaged food होगा उसपे star rating होगा. Do you remember that? Which I have already discussed it in the newspaper class.
Yes,
so
sir.
star rating of for the packaged foods. So why and how it might work? So GS paper 3 में there is one topic called food processing industry scope and the scope and challenges. So what are the challenges associated with the food processing industry that you need to know? So how this star rating for the packaged foods will help to get an idea by the people about the nutritional level of that of that food. That is what is explained here. Now what are the limits of free monetary policy? Harish Damodaran written an article. फ्री मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी मतलब गवर्नमेंट को कंट्रोल ही नहीं करना चाहिए, आरबीआई को कंट्रोल ही नहीं करना चाहिए अबाउट मनी सप्लाई. That is what is called free monetary policy. So what are the limits of free monetary policy? That has been explained by Harish Damodaran. Food and beverages items have a combined 40.86 weight in the overall CPI. Consumer price index सभी को पता है. In the basics of inflation topic we have already discussed about consumer retail price. तो सीपीआई में जो बास्केट है उसमें ज्यादा वेटेज दिया गया ऑन फूड एंड बेवरेजेस. दैट इज अराउंड 45.86% weight has been given on the food and beverages. The RBI is supposed to be accountable, but it can't win the inflation battle without the government, whether it likes or it not. मतलब इन्फ्लेशन को अगर हमें कंट्रोल करना है तो सिर्फ आरबीआई ही उसके लिए अकाउंटेबल या जिम्मेवार नहीं है. गवर्नमेंट ऑल्सो नीड्स टू बी take some initiative to fight the battle of inflation. So whether it likes the RBI's policies or it does not like the RBI's policy, government को क्या करना चाहिए, उसे भी initiative लेना चाहिए. So we have already discussed the monetary policy and we are also discussing the fiscal policy now. तो आप लोग ही अभी समझ में आ गया होगा कि कैसे government can also fight the inflation. महंगाई कैसे government की policy से, fiscal policy से related to taxation, related to direct taxes, indirect taxes we have already discussed, right? Can anyone tell me direct tax and indirect tax inflation पे कैसे मदद कर सकता है? To address the issue of the direct tax and indirect tax which we have discussed in the last class.
Yes, sir. If the government, sir, direct taxes increases, then the inflation is low, sir. When the indirect taxes increases, the supply will be less, sir. And that's why, sir, inflation will be increased, sir. If the indirect taxes.
So what needs to be done from the government side to battle or to tackle the inflation?
Sir, to reduce that, हमें सर
कौन सा टैक्स रिड्यूस करना चाहिए, डायरेक्ट टैक्स या इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स?
सर इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स है सर.
इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स. एंड व्हाट अबाउट डायरेक्ट टैक्स?
डायरेक्ट टैक्स में तो डायरेक्ट टैक्स वैसे तो सर बहुत कम लोग पे करते हैं. तो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स पे ही गवर्नमेंट का फोकस होना चाहिए कि जरा और थोड़े जो टैक्सेस रेट ज्यादा है उसे कम करना चाहिए सर.
चलिए. Now so let's read this article that how both RBI as well as government needs to work together. They needs to work in sync with each other to fight the inflation. RBI मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी मनी सप्लाई कम करता जा रहा है, लेकिन अगर गवर्नमेंट प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाने के लिए, सप्लाई बढ़ाने के लिए अगर कोई इनिशिएटिव नहीं लेता है, देन इन्फ्लेशन कम नहीं होगा। समझ में आ रहा है? तो दोनों को एक दूसरे के साथ में कोऑर्डिनेटेड तरीके से काम करना चाहिए फॉर कंट्रोलिंग द इन्फ्लेशन। दैट इज व्हाट हरीश दामोदर इज सेइंग। In that RBI को मैंडेट दिया गया है दैट 6% इन्फ्लेशन में रखना है। अगर उससे ज्यादा हो जाता है तो फिर उन्हें लीगली कुछ एक्टिविटी उन्हें ली जा सकती है, उनके खिलाफ में एक्शन लिया जा सकता है। बट दैट इज व्हाट इज मेंशन्ड हियर दैट उसके बावजूद भी देयर इज अ फेलियर ऑफ अकाउंटेबिलिटी। व्हाई देयर इज अ फेलियर ऑफ द अकाउंटेबिलिटी ऑफ द RBI? व्हाट इज मॉनेटरी डिपेंडेंस एंड what are the implications of the policy? So just read this whole article, cut this article and put it into GS paper 3 topic, mobilization of resources, mobilization of financial resources. तो since अभी हमने monetary policy और fiscal policy दोनों डिस्कस किया बेसिक्स ऑफ इंडियन इकोनॉमिक क्लास में, तो you can come to know that what is the meaning of this article. Next article, foreign investors slow infusion into equities over 8.6 crore in September so far. So foreign investors are not investing much into the Indian, the financial market. So there is a sharp depreciation in Indian rupees in last few weeks because of decline in the foreign investment in India. At the same time, federal stance and rupees movement. The US federal's aggressive stance against inflation as well as the rupees movement against the dollar were major factors that foreign investors based their investment decision, as they have significant impact on returns. In this year's prelims exam, this question has been asked that which among the following factors are responsible for the investment of the foreigners in India. So Federal Reserve's stance on the inflation is also one of the important factors which influences the investment of the foreigners in India. So as per Asian Development Bank, RBI may slow down the rate hikes till next year. तो as per Asian Development Bank, Reserve Bank of India जो रेट बढ़ाता जा रहा है वो अगले साल में कम कर सकता है, ऐसे एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक ने कहा। Commerce Ministry says UAE trade deal has been signed to boost the export in India. India has signed an agreement with United Arab Emirates to boost the export in India. So as we all know that India का export कम होता जा रहा है, तो export को बढ़ाने के लिए United Arab Emirates इस कंट्री के साथ में हमने डील साइन किया है। ईरान इज ऑल्सो ऑफर्ड इंडियन कंपनीज 30% स्टेक इन गैस फील्ड। तो वहां के जो गैस फील्ड है उसमें इंडिया के कंपनीज 30% अपना इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं। दैट इज व्हाट इज मेंशन्ड बैक। Fine. So this is all there in the today's newspaper class. So those topics which I've asked you to read, please read it out. And those two topics which we will be discussing on Sunday, you need to have a background preparation. So have a good day to all of you. See you in the evening in the basics of Indian economic class.